The massacre of 11 Israeli athletes and one German police officer in Munich dramatically changed the way that global sporting events thought about security. The Olympics had been, previous to this event, sacrosanct from the dangers of violence that was feared in many parts of the world. The political, economic and cultural phenomenon that the Olympic Games was and is meant that, while security certainly existed before the massacre, it was woefully inadequate to compensate for the organisation and desire of the extremist terrorist organisations, such as Black September, that carried out the attack. It was this crime that led to the enormous increase in security at sporting events, resulting in a great increase in the amount of money spent, time and effort devoted solely to the protection of fans, athletes and dignitaries at the Games. Security at the 1972 Olympic Games seems shocking when looked at through the lens of the modern eye. Per the International Olympic Council's official report regarding the 20th Olympiad, the security staff was required to adjust itself to the idea of a serene, peaceful and unconstrained Games. As a result of this, there were only small teams patrolling in sportsmanlike clothing, and only the watch at night were armed, and they with only pistols. Also, the men who were responsible for the safety of the athletes' village were simply drawn from a pool of volunteers from the police, all of whom were liked or interested in sports and received very little extra training. The German government, still concerned about the fascist hijacking of the 1936 Games by Adolf Hitler and the obvious clouds left over from the Second World War, were afraid of representing the concept of a militarised country, and as such were more concerned about appearances than actual security. While this lack of professionalism seems stunning now, at the time it was considered reasonable and even unremarkable. This was despite the fact, again from the official report, that various authorities had received a large number of threats that were aimed directly at the Israeli team. While the organisers did conduct several meetings after hearing these reports, they did nothing tangible in regards to the athletes' safety. This lackadaisical approach to security was a primary reason that the Israeli athletes were attacked and murdered at a time when they were simply attempting to represent their country, far from the political and religious issues that drove this extremist group to commit this atrocity. The attack in Munich did, however, serve a purpose. In comparison to the security efforts put forward by the German government in 1972, in the Athens Games of 2004, as per a congressional report by Karol Migdalowicz, the Greek government spent $1.2 billion on security, with 40,000 police and 10,000 soldiers deployed for the protection of the athletes, dignitaries and the public. Meanwhile, in Munich, there was less than 20,000 total security staff, despite the threats and general global unrest that occurred before the Games. The London Olympics, wary of suicidal airstrikes, even placed several anti-air missile silos around the stadiums. This is a dramatic shift, both in cost and in levels of security. One reporter described the 2012 Olympic Village as being like an airport security upon entry, a drastic juxtaposition to the aforementioned security that needed to blend into the scenery of the 1972 Games, even going so far as to not have barbed wire fences around the athletes' villages. As a society then, we see that the security has improved in several marked areas. These are the amount of money spent on security, the dramatic increased level of training that the members of the security forces have to go through. For example, at the London Olympics, 200 of the security forces were trained in disabling both nuclear and chemical weapons. The sheer number of security staff, as already discussed, more than doubled in the 2012 London Olympics as opposed to the 1972 Olympics. And the public's awareness of and vigilance about possible terror attacks. The world today has drastically changed its opinion on security, and a large part of that was due to the attack on the Israeli athletes. The amount of money spent, extra training, and increased numbers of both police and military at major sporting events is a proof of this. And it was the Munich Olympics and the terrible crime that took place there that began this huge shift towards the massive amounts of security that we see at the Olympics and events like it in the modern era.
Created using Powtoon.